are proven to have been involved in terrorist activities. I don't see why they should not themselves be put on the terrorist watch list. One could even theoretically put the ISI itself on the group of foreign terrorist organizations. I mean, there are a number of options available to the U.S., not least the massive amounts of aid it provides. And I think at this point right now, what we can do in the interim is remind Pakistan that, perhaps a day of reckoning will come.
You also said that there's a lot of the billions of dollars of aid that are essentially not reaching where they're supposed to go. Where are they going? Where is that money going?
Right. In some cases, we don't know. In some cases, it's going to domestic subsidies. We've actually found out that a lot of the money that we give to Pakistan, I actually assume much of it was being misallocated to the army to be spent on conventional weapons. That is the case, and Pakistan, of course, is lobbying the U.S. for conventional weapons that are not useful in the war on terror. But much of the money actually just goes to domestic subsidies, like fuel subsidies, for instance, to keep the Pakistani people from storming the streets. Other bits of money go to lining the pockets of corrupt officials, to other government priorities that have nothing to do with what we're trying to provide aid for, any number of things.
Let's take some questions. I know your mouths are full, but if you'll raise your hand and please identify yourself and ask a question over there. Please, go ahead. Stand up. Just hold on one second, a microphone's coming by.
I have a question regarding the Security Council. I was wondering if you could talk about what was the thinking that went into endorsing India's position, and whether the Bush administration, were there any point in how it was considering the several relations were so close, and how long do you think it's going to take for this to actually happen? Thank you.
The Bush administration was thinking about it, but interestingly enough, as the most pro-Indian government in a long time, did not take that leap. President Bush stated on many occasions, this is something we need to consider. We need to talk about an expanded role at the Security Council, and if there is one, India should be a part of that. So in a sense, you could look at it as he was laying the groundwork for this decision to be made. But the buck stops with the president, and the Bush administration never did formally endorse this role. So the Obama administration, in that sense, deserves credit. That was a decision made at the top, possibly because President Obama's relations with India were flagging a bit, and he was beginning to take a lot of criticism at home from many people, myself included, about U.S.-India relations on his watch, and he may have rightly viewed this as a very positive development to come out of his trip. As far as Security Council reform being actualized, that's a much more difficult question, not least because China has still not endorsed this seat for India, and as a veto-wielding member of the Security Council, it could itself nix any attempt to put India on the council. But even more importantly than that, there is no consensus among the current council members on A, how many new members should be added, B, would those members be given a veto like the permanent 5 now, or would they not have a veto like the 10 rotating members, and C, if there is an expansion and we give them a veto or don't, who gets on? India.
As you said, and even other people in the administration have said repeatedly that Pakistan is a nursery of terrorism. Pakistan is promoting terrorism. We in India are concerned because we know the facts, and we would like the US administration to realize that this blackmail will go on forever.
I would.
Do you want to answer that?
Well, I would, in many ways, associate myself with those remarks.
So far, the US has been very careful about whatever it says about the safety of Pakistan's nuclear arsenal and
I'm sorry, a leverage point the United States raises with Pakistan?
Yeah, in terms of saying this need to secure a nuclear arsenal, it's important for us to do that. Why would we keep reviewing this deal? This is something that comes up. But talk about it.
Yeah.
Question.
Well, the Pakistanis are actually very sensitive, as you may know, about their nuclear arsenal. And there are more than a few people inside Pakistan, including inside the government, who believe that the United States ultimately wants to dismember Pakistan and steal its nuclear weapons. So this has made them hypersensitive to cooperation with us on this issue. They have not been as open and as transparent as we have been urging them to do for a long time. Now, U.S. government officials, intelligence officials, current and retired, so I know they're speaking with candor, say they have a adequate degree of confidence in the safety of those nuclear weapons, that Pakistan does in fact have important safeguards in place, and they don't seem unsettled by that question, and these are the type of people who would be unsettled by that, or who would make me nervous if they were nervous. But there have been revelations as of late with some of the WikiLeaks documents that have come out, some reporting by online news organizations that suggest that perhaps those nuclear weapons are not as safe as we once thought they were, and that this should be a growing concern. As you mentioned, they are expanding their arsenal at a faster pace than anyone else in the world, and that's pretty much a well-known fact. Some of it is that the people in the government don't believe we can because of Afghanistan. Some of it is because there are still people in the U.S. government who view Pakistan in a much different light, who have worked with Pakistan for the past 40 years and just know them as, you know, the ally from the Cold War, and their military is buddy-buddy with our military, and they've studied here, and there are personal links. So like I said, some of this will just take time. You know, the United States, I think, to its credit, has at least notionally and vocally, or at least on paper, made a point to highlight India-focused jihadist groups in Pakistan. There was a time when, I think regretfully, the United States said, you know, we do need to focus on international jihadist groups, but guys like LET, JEM, they just focus on Kashmir, they're focused on India. You know, this is not much of a concern of ours. I believe, particularly since Mumbai, but also since we've uncovered more intelligence about Lashkar-e-Taiba, the United States has A, grown to realize that these groups that are so-called exclusively focused on India actually have international aspirations, and B, even if they are exclusively focused on India, A, there are Americans in India, and B, India is our ally and we should care anyway. So, you know, you've seen Lashkar, you've seen some of these groups finally added to the State Department's terrorist list. You know, there has been action. I'd like to see more, but you know, as I keep pounding home, I believe this will change. It's just a long, slow process.
We're going to do last couple of questions.
Hi, my name is Manjma Sultana. I'm Vice President of Indian National Overseas Congress. And this will be a Republican. Right?
Independent.
Okay. I'm a right?
I-
The point I was making was basically to my brother's query. What happens to the mosques in the U.S.? The mosques in the U.S. also have to go through the rigorous bureaucracy and permission and inspection. And all the mosques in the U.S. are open to public inspection. Anybody can drop in anytime. FBI works with them, and they work with FBI. I just wanted to add some time that is in case mosque is coming to you and they cannot even get scared. So I thought I just wanted to say. I have five comments.
Hello, Professor Swarni Kaushik. First of all, thank you for a very concise analysis. Is to look into the future. In that regard, therefore, you and everything you have said and analyzed and identified issues. What do you see the state of Afghanistan, Pakistan in 5 years, 10 years, and the U.S. role and so
She has the answers yes, no, and maybe.
Let me work back very quickly. President Obama, first of all, President Bush was out of the ordinary in his zeal for U.S.-India relationship, so that was going to be a hard bar to meet anyway. And I do, most indications are that President Obama, is favorable towards the relationship with India. He just has not pursued it with as much vigor as the previous administration, and there are many things I wish he would do better and do more of. He also has been consumed with more than a few, domestic and foreign issues of his own. On security and defense or economic cooperation, that is, I think, an important point to bring up. There's a lot of room for opportunity for U.S.-India links to grow. Everyone, I'm sure, is familiar with the MMRCA. There's a massive deal out for 126 medium multi-role combat aircraft. The United States is pushing hard to sell either the F-16 or the F-18. Those are two of the aircraft involved in this process. But in the past week, the United States actually made first noises that the F-35, the Joint Strike Fighter, which is a new fighter we're developing, would also be available to the Indians sometime in the future, or we'd at least be open to exploring that option. I believe there's been a reluctance on many in the Indian side, and there's an understandable desire to build indigenous military equipment. They want to be self-reliant, and I understand that impetus, but I do also think that gets in the way of cooperation. I mean, there should be a division of labor. If somebody, and particularly somebody you're friends with, has already built a top-notch weapon system and is willing to sell it to you and operate it with you, and I think I do wish they would just get over some of the hesitancy, because I think the United States has demonstrated over the past 10 years that we are a partnership, we are a partner, and we're in this for the long term. I don't know that I can be very productive forecasting where Afghanistan or Pakistan will be in the next 10 years, and I think I do have a few more questions, so maybe after the Q&A we can talk on the side.
I want to introduce everybody to a great friend of the Indian community, one of our own, who is